On January 30, 1945, in the icy waters of the Baltic Sea, the Soviet submarine S-13 launched a torpedo attack on the German passenger liner Wilhelm Gustloff. At the time of its construction, this ship was one of the largest cruise liners in the world. According to historians, the sinking claimed the lives of over 9,000 people, most of them civilians, making it the deadliest maritime disaster of the 20th century. For comparison, only about 1,500 people died aboard the Titanic. The Wilhelm Gustloff wasn't just any ship. It was a symbol of Nazi Germany, known in the Third Reich as the Ship of the Sun. It had been built using funds provided by the Nazi leisure organization Strength Through Joy, which aimed to create affordable vacation opportunities for German workers. The ship offered week-long cruises to Italy for just 150 Reichsmarks, far cheaper than similar cruises in other European countries, which were typically reserved for the wealthy elite. The construction cost reached 25 million Reichsmarks. The ship was 208.5 meters long, and its height from keel to mast reached 56 meters. On August 25, 1939, the Wilhelm Gustloff set off on another peaceful cruise. But in the North Sea, the captain received a coded message ordering an immediate return. Days later, World War II began. The ship was soon transferred to the German Navy and converted into a hospital ship. It was repainted white and marked with red crosses, making it illegal to attack under the Hague Convention. In October 1939, during the invasion of Poland, the first wounded soldiers were brought aboard. Nazi propaganda used the ship to portray Germany as humane. Even wounded Polish prisoners were treated on board for the cameras. Later, as German casualties mounted, the ship began evacuating German wounded soldiers. Eventually, the Wilhelm Gustloff lost its protected status when it was repainted in camouflage and assigned to a naval training center in Gottenhafen, now Gdynia, Poland. It became a floating barracks and a secret training facility for submarine crews. The commander of the Kriegsmarine's U-boat arm, Karl Donitz, proposed turning the liner into a center for training elite crews for Germany's new Type 21 submarines, part of Hitler's so-called miracle weapons program, which also included V-2 rockets and jet fighters. British intelligence eventually intercepted German communications about these plans. An air raid was launched against Gottenhafen, but the Wilhelm Gustloff, anchored in the harbor, escaped with minor damage. The very next day, Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels declared, "The Wilhelm Gustloff cannot sink. Like the Reich, it is unsinkable." By 1943, the training school was moved elsewhere, and all remaining documents were loaded onto a submarine and sent in an unknown direction. Fast forward to late 1944. Soviet forces entered East Prussia and took the city of Memel. Panic swept the civilian population. Hundreds of thousands of German refugees fled westward. When East Prussia was cut off from the rest of Germany, desperate civilians tried to reach the Baltic coast in hopes of evacuation. This triggered Operation Hannibal, one of the largest sea evacuations in history. Over 4 months, approximately 2 million Germans, both civilians and military personnel, were transported across the Baltic Sea to Western Germany. The operation was personally overseen by Grand Admiral Karl Donitz. The sheer scale and speed of the evacuation rivaled even the Dunkirk operation. Among the ships used in this mass evacuation was the Wilhelm Gustloff. At first, the boarding process was organized and required special passes, but as tens of thousands of refugees flooded into the port, order quickly broke down. People were crammed into every available space: decks, hallways, even drained swimming pools. By January 30, 1945, around 10,000 people were on board, more than 6 times the number the ship was originally designed for. At 12:30 p.m., the liner departed, escorted by 2 military vessels. On the bridge, officers argued about the safest course to take. Eventually, they abandoned the standard zigzag pattern used to avoid submarines and proceeded in a straight line at 12 knots, hoping to outrun any potential threats. Soon after departure, one escort ship struck a reef and had to return. The Wilhelm Gustloff was left with only a single escort, torpedo boat Love. That evening, the crew received a mysterious radio message claiming that friendly minesweepers were approaching, so they turned on the ship's navigation lights to avoid a collision. But there were no minesweepers. Instead, the lights exposed the ship's silhouette in the darkness, an easy target for Soviet submarine S-13 under the command of Captain Alexander Marinesko. The sub had surfaced to recharge its batteries when Marinesko spotted the illuminated liner. He trailed it for 2 hours, moving on the surface to keep up. Submarines of that era couldn't match a liner's speed underwater, but the overloaded and poorly maintained Wilhelm Gustloff was moving slower than expected. At 7:30 p.m., the crew switched off the lights. Too late. Marinesko had already plotted his attack. He maneuvered S-13 into position and fired 3 torpedoes. A 4th torpedo got stuck in the launch tube and could have exploded, but the crew disarmed it just in time. The first torpedo struck the bow. The second hit near the drained swimming pool. The third detonated in the engine room, shutting down all power. Many passengers assumed they had hit a mine. The captain, however, knew better. Turning to his officers, he said grimly, "That's it." Panic broke out. Passengers rushed to lifeboats, but the freezing weather had coated them in ice. Worse, the watertight doors had been sealed shut, trapping many crew members responsible for lowering the lifeboats. In the chaos, only a few lifeboats could be launched. Within an hour, the Wilhelm Gustloff rolled to its side and disappeared beneath the waves. Torpedo boat Love rescued 472 people. Later, the cruiser Admiral Hipper, already carrying 1,500 refugees, approached the scene. Fearing another torpedo attack, it left without helping. Another escort vessel, T-36, saved 179 more. Eventually, several more ships arrived, but by then, it was too late. Nearly everyone aboard had perished. The tragedy of the Wilhelm Gustloff sparked controversy that continues to this day. Was the ship a legitimate military target or a war crime? Many historians argue it was a valid target. According to international law, civilian ships must be clearly marked and not be accompanied by military vessels. The Wilhelm Gustloff was painted in camouflage, armed with anti-aircraft guns, and escorted by a torpedo boat. It was no longer a hospital ship. It was part of the war machine. Moreover, the ship carried Nazi officers, submarine cadets, and possibly classified documents. By that measure, the responsibility for the civilian deaths lies with German military command. It's worth remembering that German forces also attacked refugee ships. In 1941, the Soviet hospital ship Armenia was bombed by German aircraft while evacuating civilians and wounded soldiers. Between 5,000 and 10,000 people died. Like the Wilhelm Gustloff, the Armenia was armed, camouflaged, and traveling under military escort. Captain Alexander Marinesko was initially nominated for the title Hero of the Soviet Union. However, due to disciplinary issues, he was instead awarded the Order of the Red Banner. He was later demoted and dismissed from the Navy. To this day, the wreck of the Wilhelm Gustloff lies 45 meters beneath the Baltic Sea, marked on Polish maritime charts as Obstacle 73. Until 1955, Polish divers were forbidden to explore the site. Only Soviet military divers were allowed to descend. When Polish teams finally visited the wreck, they were shocked. The ship was shattered into fragments. The midsection had been cut open and in some places deliberately blown apart. What were the Soviets looking for? Some theories suggest that the Wilhelm Gustloff was carrying gold, artwork, or even the legendary Amber Room. No concrete evidence supports these claims, and Soviet records related to the wreck remained classified to this day. What is clear is that the Wilhelm Gustloff tragedy remains the single deadliest shipwreck in history, a haunting reminder of the human cost of war, and of the thin line between civilian and military in times of desperation.
Please don't forget to subscribe or write a comment and put a bell so as not to miss new videos. Thanks for watching.